Welcome everyone to this module on Git tutorial. Now in this tutorial by Simplilearn is designed in such a way so that we can give you a basic understanding that how exactly Git really works. Now in this one we are going to talk about various concepts which we involve in Git. We are going to also talk about the various Git commands which we are going to talk about here, and a variety of things, and different kind of demos are also a part of this one. Now Git is something which is really popular at right now over here. Before the Git, Subversion was quite popular and a lot of organizations were actually using it. But now Git is a kind of a version control system which helps us to track the changes just like any other version control system into a particular working copy or into our particular laptop. Now it's having a certain benefits which is exactly not available in any of the other version control system. So it's used to coordinate the work among the developers. So different developers are actually collaborating with each other with the help of this version control system. They are able to track the progress. The senior developers or the leads or the managers can always find out that what are the different changes a developer is doing, how the different commits are happening there. So it's a wonderful feature of a version control system that you get a complete tracking, you get a complete history. So any person can go ahead with the version control system and they can really find out that what exactly it's happening into this one. So all those features are definitely provided by Git also. It is used to have act as a kind of collaboration tool so that multiple developers can really push their source code to this remote repository. And then again, it also provides us the tracking mechanism to track the overall progress of the development. So the main work of Git is to manage the projects, and a couple of repositories are managed here. And in these repositories, you manage your work, you manage your source code, and the developers perform various kind of activities like checkout, check-in, push, pull, different activities they do to interact with the source code. Right, so Git can be useful for both programming professionals like the developers and all, and non-programming particular professionals also. Now as a DevOps engineer, if you are not doing the programming, still you can use the Git repositories for having your files, for having your source codes, your scripts. You can store Ansible scripts, you can store Puppet script, you can store Python shell scripts, all that things you can do it. For you, it is a kind of a source code. For developers, they can store Java source code, .NET source code, Android projects. So that's a kind of a source code for those particular programming language or for those teams. Now, that is the reason why Git is really helpful over here, because it provides the comfort or it provides the help to both the programming professionals and the non-programming or non-technical professionals also. Right? So it also helps in coordinating the work among the team because of the tracking feature, history feature, and the collaboration here. So different developers can actually use these repositories so that they can push their source code to this single location. And then in fact, different developers can, take updates. They can even find out that what other developers are doing. So they can do the sync up, and even if someone is not giving you the particular details, still you will be able to get it from the repository. So that's a kind of a good collaboration mechanism or tool which can really help to increase or improve the communication between the different developers. So what exactly is a Git repository? Now a Git repository is a place where we keep all the files related to our project stored there. Now there are two types of Git repositories. One is local repository and one is the remote repository. Now when we work with Git version control system, so what happens that we have a central remote repository which is available there on the Git server. Now this is something not present in local system, it's a remote server. So when you do a clone activity, when you bring that repository into your local system, now what happens that in Git version control system, it does not create only a working copy, but in fact a local repository is created. Now this local repository is having the link up, or it's having the connectivity with the remote repository. So whatever the changes you will do, if you push your changes to the remote repository, that is something which will be possible with the help of this version control system. So here it's not like every time you will be interacting with the remote repository. Whenever you feel that you want to push some changes to the remote repository, at that moment of time, there are some couple of operations like push and pull activity which you will be using to interact from the local repository to the remote repository. So local repository is the one which you will be bringing on when you clone the remote repository. Now remote repository is the repository which is having the main important source code. So using the local repository, you will be interacting with the remote repository, and that's how the various kind of operations, you can do the modifications, whatever the commits you have performed, you will push it, you will pull it. So all those activities you will be able to do with the help of local and remote repository. So these two type of repositories are available, which we can further use to make our changes and perform our particular source code changes here. Right, now let's talk about some of the git commands, because ultimately when we work with the git version control system, we have to do a various kind of operations like pushing the commits, performing the merging. So all those commands, let's talk about that. Now the very first one, the basic commands over here is that git config. So git config is the mechanism using which we can configure the username and email ID. Now why we require this? When you will be doing some git commits or you will be doing the modification, so as a standard feature of version control system, it preserves the author details, like whatever commit it wants to do. Whenever he wants to create a new version, it has to embed some of the author details. Now this author details involve an email ID and a particular username. Now this email ID and username, if you don't configure, in that case some dummy system related email ID and username will be picked up. So in that situation, we will not be able to understand that whether the particular check-in is done by a developer or it's being done by a particular machine. So for better understanding, to get a better comfort, that's the reason why we use the git config over here to configure the username and email address over here. Then we have git init command. Now this git init command is used to create an empty bare repository. So this command, when you run, you will be able to create a bare empty repository, and after that you can further on do the modifications, you can add some commits, you can add some files, and all that stuff you can do over there pretty much. Then when you add some files, now what happens that when you do you want to go for a git commit activity, before that the files should be present in the staging area. Now staging area is a location where you will be preparing or you will be storing the files temporarily before even performing any kind of commit. So git add and git commit command is something which is executed into a sequence. First of all, you will run the git add command to bring all the changes or all the change file into a staging area, and when you done the git commit command, so all the files will be committed. Now git commit command will not take up how many files you want to commit, because whatever the files you will put up into the staging area, git commit command will read all those files and it will perform single commit for them. So if you feel that you want to only check in 2 files out of 20 files, please go for the git add command and first add only these 2 files into the staging area. If you add all the 20 files into the staging area, then all the 20 files will be modified and a new commit will be created there. Then we have git diff command. Now git diff command is used to see the changes made to the files, to see the difference. You can use git diff command with the branches also to see the difference between the 2 branches. So git commit command is something which makes sure that all the changes are saved permanently into the local repository. So git add and git commit command are executed into a sequence, so that first of all you can add the files to the staging area, and then git commit command will pick up those files from the staging area and preserve permanently as a commit into the local repository. Then we have git reset command. Git reset command used in various types. One time you can use it as in kind of just to reset the changes in the files, and in a certain way you can also use it to delete the commits from the git repository. Git status command displays you the state of working and the staging area. So git status command also tells you certain particular features like what are the different files which is in the modification state, how many files are there present in the modified state. So all those information is something which we are getting from the git status. Git merge is a very good feature because whenever we work with the different branches, so git merge is a mechanism to move the changes from one branches to another. So if you are required to do the modification to the develop branch and you want to move those changes to the master branch, in that situation we have to merge develop branch into the master branch. So it's a kind of a mechanism to move the changes from one branch to another. Then we have git push. Now till git merge command, all the commands you can run to the local repository, which means that you don't require any kind of remote repository. You can simply work on the local system, and without any network connectivity with the remote repository, you will be able to perform those changes. But git push is a mechanism to push or move the changes from the local repository to the remote repository. So whatever the commits you have done, every time it will not interact with the remote repository. Only when you run the git push and pull command, that is where you will be performing the interaction or communication between the local repository and the remote repository. Push is to push the changes from local to remote repository, and pull is something which is pulling up the updates from the remote repository to your local repository. Right, now let's talk about some of the basic git operations here. Now so far we have seen that what are the different basic git commands are there which we use time to time to perform the various operations and various tasks within the version control system of git here. Now let's talk about some of the basic git operations as such here. Now the very first one operation over here is the initialize of a git repository. Now this is something which we perform to create a kind of a new repository or a new project. Then we have add operation to add some files. Then add operation is used to add some changes or modified files to the staging area. Git commit is something which is used to create a new version of the group of files. Then pull is to bring down the changes from the remote repository to the local repository. Then push is there to push the changes from the local repository to the remote repository. So these are some of the basic operations which we perform so that we can move the changes from one state to another. And the first one is git init command. Now it's used to create a new and empty repository, where a repository over here. Now once the git init command is executed, what will happen? You will run the git init command in a folder. For example, I have created a folder called git repo, and in that I have initialized or executed the git init command. Now the moment you did the execution of git init command, so what will happen? A .git directory will be created in that system. So this .git directory represents that you are working right now onto a git repository. You can also further run the git status command and find out that okay, this is the repository preserved over here. But if you don't have the .git directory, it means that it's a plain folder and it is not a kind of a git repository. Now remember, .git folder is only the folder which is created there. There will be no files which will be created as such in this one. So git init is only creating a bare empty repository onto the system. Right, now once the repository is initialized, so you can further on go ahead and add some files, some folders, or whatever stuff you want to perform in that repository. Right, so in this diagram you can see that when you run the git init command, you will be able to see the .git directory created over here, and you will also see that that's the only folder structure which is created as such over here. So on Windows machine, you will be able to see it pretty easily because of the file name, but usually in the Linux platforms, .git is specifically designed or is known as a hidden folder. So all the files and folder with dot in front will be considered as hidden there. So in that case, you can run ls-lart to get on and to see the content over there. Then we have add operation. Now once you fire the modification is done, so once all the changes are performed there, so you will be adding the in order to perform the commits, first of all you have to add the files to the staging area. So staging area is in a particular temporary location where the git commit command will look upon, and all the files which is present in the staging area will be picked up, and all of them will be preserved or will be converted to a git commit. So before running the git commit command, git add command is required for the files to be added so that we will be able to move them to the commit here. Now in this case, you can see that git status is the one which we are running to check on which status we are right now, and we have modified like a file called alpha.txt. So git add dot is what we are trying to run over here, and then you can see that from the red color, earlier it was an untracked file, but now it's became in tracked files and it says new file. And then further we did the git commit. So at that moment of time, what will happen that this file will be completely checked out into the repository, and further after this one commit, if you run git status command, there will be no file present there. So git add and git commit command are executed into a sequence so that they will be able to have a proper commits there. Now the commit is in situation where you will be changing your history of your repository. It makes sure that the changes which you are doing is permanently preserved into the git repository. So git commit command requires a particular flag called -m. Now -m is something which is there for providing custom message for what reason you are doing the git commit. Now if you don't provide this message, your git commit will fail, but you need to provide a message to specify that what is the reason behind performing this commit activity. So that is what you are trying to provide over here with the -m over here, and preserving and providing the details that yes, this is the reason why you are performing a commit activity into your local repository. So you can see here that we are giving a particular commit message called beta gamma, but in real world you will be providing some commits like fixed debug bug 120, or fix this feature, or fixed this functionality, so that we will be able to see from the commit message that what is the reason behind this commit here. So we don't have to unnecessarily go inside the commit and find out the details. All the details we should be able to get it from the commit message. So that's the reason why it's very important that we provide a valid commit message, right? Then we have the next operation over here is the pull. Now pull is something which is used to fetch the latest updates from the remote repository and then merge those changes back to your local repository. So just kind of operation in which we are taking up the update from the remote repository. The purpose of taking update from the remote repository is that because different developers are collaborating or uploading their source code to this remote repository. So in that situation, if we want to take some updates from the remote repository, that is the reason why we will be using the git pull command to get those changes and merge it into your local repository. Then you can have some example, like we can run the command called git pull origin master. Now it will copies all the files from the remote repository to your local repository. So it will do a sync up of master branch of remote repository into the local repository master branch. You can have the it's in combination of two commands. One is a git fetch. So first of all, it downloads all the content, and then git merge, it combines all the sequence of commits into the specific branch. So it's internally, when you run git pull command, it fetches the specific contents. Now when git fetch command runs, it does not really changes any kind of modifications into your local repository. Ultimately, when the git merge happens, that is where the code changes into your local repository. But if you alone run git fetch command, it will not perform any kind of changes to your local repository, right? Here you can see that we are pulling up the details. So here we are pulling up the details of our first repo, and when that is done, so we will be able to see some details out of that. Right now, then we have git push command, which is used to push the changes from your local repository to the remote repository. You will be doing a various kind of commits into your local repository. So at some moment of time, you need to sync up or move those changes to remote repository. That is where we will be running the git push command. So git push command is required. It needs a network connectivity, and before git push command, if you want to do some changes, you can do that. And once you want to share or you want to bring those changes to the remote repository, that is where you will be able to run the git push activity as such. So this is a kind of a mechanism using which you will be able to push some changes from the local repository to the remote repository. So here you can see that we are pushing the changes from the master branch of our local repository to a remote repository. And in this case, as you can see that it here says here as a new branch because the remote repository was empty and there is no master branch present over there. So that is the reason why it says new branch over here. So these were some of the Git operations which talk about that how we can do some basic information and basic stuff over there. But now next thing which we have over here is the advanced Git operations. Now in this one, some couple of operations involved as in Git branch. Then we have the git merge, and then we have the git rebase here. Now the first one is the branch. Now a branch is in kind of a way of doing a parallel and independent development over here. Now at some moment of time you feel that the developers needs to work on the source code or the changes independent of each other. So in this situation you will be giving either a feature branch or a development branch to different developers. They will be doing their respective changes to these branches, and then further on you can do the sync up and you can merge the changes to a single branch according to the requirement. So the commits are done isolated from each other. So if you're doing some commits in develop branch, it will not put any kind of impact on the master branch. So git branch command is used to create a branch, to list a branch, to delete a branch, or to particular rename a specific branch also. Then we have merge. When we are talking about branching, then merging is also an important task. So the merge command is used to move the changes or one or multiple changes from one branch to another. So it is a mechanism to perform a sync up of the commits from one branch to another. So git merge command is used to combine two branches, and it's some kind of a mechanism in which we find out a single base, a common base, and then on top of that we move the changes or we combine the two branches here. Now git rebase is also performed for the same approach, but the process of rebasing refers to moving or combining a sequence of a commit into a new base commit. So git rebase is something which is doing a little bit restructuring of the commits, and normally git merge command is involved in which it can preserve the specific base commit, and on top of that it can add up your commits and it can do the modifications. But when we talk about rebase is something which is combining the commits, but it also preserves, or it may end up in having a new base commit as such over here. So git rebase is somehow doing some modifications and restructuring the overall baseline of the commits, right? So git rebase command is used to integrate the changes from one branch to another here. Now these were some of the advanced features which is primarily used by the development team to do the modifications in different branches, then use the merge or rebase command to move those changes across the different branches here. Now let's talk about GitHub. Now what exactly is a GitHub there? Now there are some common scenarios where we think that okay, Git is different and GitHub is different. No, it's not like that. Ultimately, GitHub is nothing but an organization which internally uses the Git repository only. So they are using the Git solution only, but it's kind of a web-based graphical interface which is given to you just to have a better interaction with the Git repositories. So it's kind of a Git repository hosting service which is available there. So for example, you have the various hosting machines like GoDaddy is there, different other vendors are there, but ultimately they provide the same virtual machines like Linux, Windows and all that. Similarly here also they are all using the Git only, but they are providing it in as a kind of a good interface. They're providing you certain features, and these features are somewhere you can have the security, you can have the user base, you can have the permissions. So all those features you get with the help of the GitHub here. So it's a kind of a web interface which is given to you just to interact with the Git repository, to create them, to manage them, to delete them, all those activities. So it helps every team member to integrate with each other and at any moment of time. Now this is something which you can access anywhere. If you are using the public version of GitHub, you can use the repository anywhere with any network. But if you are using a private network or a private repository, in that situation definitely in your office or into your network you will be able to access. But it primarily depends on the way that how you are doing the modification and how exactly you have done the changes so far and so over here. right? So it's one of the good collaboration tool which is present, which primarily talks about that how we can do the modifications and how we can move the changes from, we can have the collaboration between different developers and they can really do the changes and those modifications. Right now, what are the different features which we have of GitHub? So let's talk about that. Now, some of the features are present over here in this way that represents that what are the mechanism and understanding about the specific GitHub here. So let's talk about these features. Now, the very first feature of this one is the easy project management. Now, it's a very good platform where you can, have different kind of access levels. Project managers and, developers can coordinate, they can track and they can update their work. You can manage the repositories, you can manage the access, you can perform the changes, you can perform the rollback. A lot of things can really happen there, and everything is recorded, nothing. So even the account activity is also recorded. So if someone is creating the repository, is deleting the repository, all that information is there. So it's kind of a easy project management where at a single location all the repositories are there. So it's quite easy for you to manage and to work on these repositories and to talk about them. Next, we have effective team management. Now, it helps all the team members to stay on the same page and stay organized. So it's a kind of a modernized tool which is available there to so that different people can, work on the same platform. They don't have to learn different platforms here. As such, on the same platform, they will be able to collaborate and they will be able to, work with each other. Then improved code writing. So there are some features like pull request, which gives you functionality before even doing the merge activity. You will be able to do some review. So it definitely helps a kind of a check which is there, that before even doing some kind of merging, you should be able to review it. You should be able to see that what exactly you are trying to do, what kind of commits you are performing, and that can really helps to do some improvements to your source code, to your overall source code. So that's an additional check which is provided by the pull request feature of GitHub. It's not a typical merge only. It's something someone will review, someone approve it, then only the merge activity will happen. Now, GitHub uses different tools to identify and analyze the issues there. So there are some tools or features which is available there in GitHub where you can also further on increase or analyze the source code and analyze the issues with the source code there. So development teams can work together to to secure the software supply chain. These particular say repositories are quite secured, and that is the reason why not everyone have the access or default access to the source code. So this is quite restricted, and due to this feature it's easy to maintain the high quality of your source code, right? And then we have the easy code hosting here. So all the codes and documentations are present in one location. There are millions of repositories which is available there on GitHub, and each repository is comprises of its own source code and its own different people having the access, right? And then it increased safety with packages. Those packages can be published privately. You can have both public and private access. The packages can be used or reused by downloading it from GitHub, and other variety of applications is there. So if you're working on open source, in that situation it will be publicly available. If you're working as in privately for an secure organization, in that case it will be available privately there, right? So these were some of the various operations which was there related to Git. Now let's talk about some demo and see that how exactly we can go for that implementation and we can see some real operations of Git. So let's connect to our Git Simplilearn lab over here, a Linux lab where we can perform all these various operations and we can see that how exactly it works. So let's log into the lab. Okay, so we have logged into the Simplilearn lab over here in the Linux. Now in this one, the various steps we are going to do is step by step. So first of all, we have our particular GitHub account logged in. So that's the account which we were using. Okay, so we will create a remote repository here. So first of all, we will be preparing a bare empty repository. Now after that, we will be adding some files, we will be doing some git commit activities, and then we are going to talk about like some branching concepts and then the merging concepts and all that stuff, right? So now let's log into the particular lab here. So I'm opening the terminal. Now here does not requires any kind of root access or those kind of stuff. So I'm going to create a folder structure with the name called repo. So repo is the folder which I'm going to create as such over here. So in this case, right now, as you can see that there is no repository or nothing is present here. So I will run the git init command, which will do nothing, but it will initialize a bare repository over here. So as you can see that when you run the git init command, you will be able to see a .git directory created. Now this .git directory represents that you are working with a empty bare git repository. Now once you get the repository, now if you have to execute some git commands, like I can run the git status command, which can really let us know that yes, you are working on a git repository. If you don't have the .git directory, definitely this kind of response you will not be able to get, right? So far we have only added up a particular kind of a git empty repository over here. Now I'm going to create some files. Okay, so these files I'm going to create so as I should be able to do some modifications, and I should be able to add some files. So I'm going to create a file called master.txt. In this case, when I edit file, so I'm going to add like my first repository over here. So that's what I need to do. So this is my master.txt file here. So once the master.txt file is created, now if I run the git status command, what will be the response? The response will show me that you are basically trying to add a new file. So there is an untracked file, new file over here. In order to track it and in order to add it to the staging area, we have to further on do the git add command. Now git add command alone will not work. You have to further on after that run the git commit command also to preserve it or to showcase it as an kind of a git commit here. So first of all, I will add the master.txt file. So what will happen to the status? So you can see that the color of the file is being changed from red to green here. Green represents that this is a new file and the master.txt file is being printed over there. So far we have added this master.txt file into the staging area. Staging area is a kind of a area in which we will be adding up some couple of files, and the whole purpose of adding those files is that we should be able to proceed to the next level, which is nothing but the git commit activity. So we are going to run the git commit activity over here. Now in this one I can say like first commit. According to my comfort, I can give whatever the message I want to provide. I can provide that information. Right now in this case, as you can see that it picked up my default author over here, right? So if I want to do that modification, if I want to perform that activity and I want to change my author details, I can run the git config command over here. Now git config command, I can go for global. I can say like user.name. I can have like my name, some dummy ID I can provide here. So what will happen that all the further commits which I will be doing, that I will be able to do, and I will be able to set up there. Right now my author details is configured, so I will reset my author using this command here. So this is in kind of a mechanism that once your details is being changed, your username and email ID's details is changed, you should be able to reset your author details. Right, so it will open the commit message again. You just have to save it, and after that the commit should be performed here. So earlier the commit was being done with the details called Ubuntu, which is the user right now, and some dummy IP address. But at any moment of time you want to have your own username password, so you can say like git config -- global user.name. You have added a username here, then you are going for git config -- global user email ID over here, and after that what you have to do, you just have to reset the author details so that whatever the commits you have done so far, that also should be updated. So instead of having a Ubuntu user and some random email ID, now you're giving a specific author. In this case it's me, a specific author details as such into the history. So once the git commit command is executed, so what will happen, happen that an entry will be made up into the history. Now there is only one commit, which means that the last commit which you have performed, that have eventually added up the git commit activity. So this is the overall mechanism that how exactly you can create a bare repository. Then you have added up some couple of files, then you added or executed git add command, and further on you did the git commit command. During the git commit command we faced a difficulty, the author details was not proper, then we added the author details, and then we reset our author details so that we should be able to perform a basic operation. And this mechanism should let us know that how the execution and the performance is happening here. So the overall mechanism you can perform as such over here is that how exactly this particular mechanism or this activity is really performing, right? So this is the way that how exactly the overall operation is really happening, and you are able to get a kind of a log, a kind of a history in the repository, that what is the change which is being done, who is the person who have performed the changes. Now if you want to get the changes that what was changed over here, so for that you can run the command called git show and the specific commit ID. Once that is done, so what will happen, you will also be able to say that yes, you have added the content called my first repo. That is what you have added so far in this commit here. So these are some of the basic operations which time to time we perform so that we can do some changes really to our particular repository, right? So this was some of the steps there. Now further on, what we will be doing, we will be basically performing a branching mechanism. So let's talk about branching. So right now the branch which we have connected so far is the master branch. You can see a static symbol in front of which it means that you are pointing down to this specific branch as such over here. So next what you're going to do is that you are going to create a new branch. So we will say that I'm going to create a develop branch here. So when you run the git branch -l here, so it says that the develop branch is created, but it's not pointed out right now. So in order to move to that branch, so you have to run the git checkout command to move to that branch. Now once you move to that branch, you will be able to see the static symbol is in front of develop branch. So this movement from one branch to another is important, because ultimately if you want to do the modification to the develop branch, you have to be there in that develop branch. If you want to go to the master branch, you have to be there in master branch. So this is something which ultimately you need to understand, so that there should not be any kind of interference between the branches as such over here. So this is the overall mechanism. So now whatever the commits we will be doing, that will be checked in into the specific develop branch, and all the changes will be performed as such over there. So now the next activity which we are going to talk about over here is that how exactly we can proceed further to these activities. Now what mechanism we are going to follow over next over here is that right now in this case you can see that git branch -l is there. So develop is being pointed out. If you want to see the difference, so you can say like git diff master. So that will show you the difference. Right now there is no difference as such over here, which represents the difference is not at all present so far in this case, right? So the next activity which we need to do over here in this mechanism is we will be performing some changes to this master branch here. So I will add some content here saying adding content in develop branch, just to have a proper check, so that if somehow I will see the files, I should be able to see that okay, this is what I have changed in the develop branch. Now these two lines are there. Definitely when I am going to see the difference here again, when I run the diff command, so it will do a branch to branch comparison, and it will say that yes, in this branch you have some additions which is not present in master branch, right? So that's the whole idea. The particular master branch should not be touched upon. If I'm doing some modification to develop branch, that changes should be present in the particular this branch only. Now in this case, what happens, now we know that git add command and git commit command we have to run. So I'm going to say like develop branch, right? So just an kind of a message you want to provide. So that's done. So if I do the git log here, so I should be able to see a new commit. Instead of one commit, two commits are there. In master branch, only one commit is there. that you can eventually check also. I can go to the master branch and I can check that also. So in master branch right now you can see the last output is showing one commit. This one is showing one commit because it's present in the master branch. This one is showing two commits because it's present in the develop branch. So both the branches are having two different set of commits. Now definitely if you want to move the changes from the develop branch to the master branch, all you have to do is that you have to sync up. And how this sync up is done? It's done using the help of merge activity. So we will double check that on which branch we are right now. So we have checked that we are onto the master branch. We have to merge the specific develop branch into the master branch. So for that, what we will be doing, we will be running the command called git merge develop. So when we do that, what will happen, that it will eventually let me know, or it will eventually move or sync those changes from the develop branch to the master branch. So earlier in the previous situation, master branch was showing one commit, but now in this case it's also showing the specific that commit also moved on along over here. So this is how the sync up really happens, and the commits really move from one branch to another. Now in this case, it's not only the commit which is being reflected, but even the file is also being updated over here as such. So the master.txt file is also showing that the second line is being added as such over here. Right, so this is the overall mechanism and the system, that how exactly this whole activity is really working, and how we will be able to get some execution and we will be able to get some particular results out of this one. So this is the way that how the branching and the merging really happens as such over here. So right now we are working on the repository, and this repository is nothing but a local repository. So far, now next we will be talking about the interaction between the GitHub and this local repository, or remote and local repository. So we'll go to the GitHub remote repository. Here we'll click on the particular new repository here. So I'm going to create a particular repo called git repo here. The name is available, but if I give some different name, so if it is not available, so that will not allow me to create a repository. So here the public and private specifier, you have to select. Public, anyone can see, but no one will be able to do the modification unless we provide the access. Private, nobody will be able to see the content unless and until he is not having the access. So only modification and view access both is restricted if they have the access to the repo. We don't have to initialize the repository with the readme. I want to create a bare repository, so create. Once the repo is created, you will see three sections of the information. First, if you want to create a new repository on the command line and do that, so you can see that some of the activities we have already done so far, so we don't require this section. Second section saying that if you already have a repository and you want to push it to the remote repository, so you have to run these commands. So these are something which we need to really do. So I am going to run this command. Now this command is something which is trying to add the remote origin over here. Now why origin is required? Because every time I cannot simply use the lengthy URL and I cannot remember it also. So you can see here that it's kind of a shortcut over here, that origin is being referred as this URL. So both for pull and push activity we will be using this one. So you will be running like git push origin master. It will definitely ask for your credentials, so you will give the URL username and you will also give the password. Now once that is done, so what you will see over here is that you will be able to see that a new branch is created, because in GitHub repository you were not having any kind of code base available. So when you refresh, the code will be available there. But this is just the master branch. If you want to move the particular develop branch here, it's the same details you have to provide. The same username, credentials also are same which you need to provide. And once that is done, you will be able to see that develop branch is also created as such over here. So you see two branches. Two branches are in proper sync up, and you want to delete a branch, you can do that. You want to switch a branch, you can do that also. Because of the dummy IP address, you must have seen that it's showing a particular different username here, because I have just provided a different email ID like abc@abc.com, so which is totally wrong. So ideally, when you will be providing the actual information about their username, that will be presented over here and that should be displayed. But right now, I just provided a dummy email ID, so not the genuine one. So here, if you click on this commit ID, so you will see the content. This is the last commit which we were doing. This is the first commit which we did on that part. So this is how you interact with the Git repository. Right from the scratch, we have prepared this repository. We have executed that. And as you can see that once the repository is created, you were able to get a particular Git repository on the GitHub there. So that's it for this demo. I think you like it. So that was kind of a complete demo on Git, some basic operations, the relationship between Git, GitHub, that's what we have seen. So that's it for this. Thanks everyone for this module. In this module, hope you will be able to understand fully that how exactly the Git really works and how we can get out of this, right? Thanks everyone for this one. Bye.
Hi there, if you like this video, subscribe to the Simplilearn YouTube channel and click here to watch similar videos. To nerd up and get certified, click here.